the day the moving truck appeared. The sky over Maplewood was the color of tin. Lily Thompson was already running late for work, one hand clutching a travel mug of lukewarm coffee, the other steering her 6-year-old son, Owen, toward the car. The boy dragged his feet, backpack half-sipped, crayons clattering inside. Shoes, Owen, both of them. I can't find the left one. It's on your foot, she said. Exhausted, he blinked down, grinned sheepishly, and shoved his right shoe on. The house next door had been empty for almost a year, a 2-story place with ivy choking, the fence and blinds drawn like tired eyes. Lily barely noticed it anymore. But that morning, a rumbling engine broke the quiet. A truck, big and silver, backed into the driveway. A man stepped out. He was tall, lean, wearing a dark hoodie and jeans that looked just a bit too clean for yard work. His movements were calm, deliberate, not hurried like most movers. He said something to the driver, handed him an envelope, then turned toward the house. "Mum," Owen whispered, tugging her sleeve. "Is he the new neighbor?" Lily squinted. "Looks like it." The man glanced their way, not nosy, not overly friendly, just aware. When their eyes met, Lily felt a flicker of recognition she couldn't explain. He nodded once. "Morning." His voice was low, steady, a little too composed for a man carrying boxes himself. "Morning," Lily said back, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. "Welcome to Maplewood." "Thanks," he replied simply, then turned toward the porch. Owen stared. "He doesn't look like he smiles much." Lily chuckled. "Maybe he just hasn't met you yet." By the time she dropped Owen off at school and made it to St. Mary's Hospital, the image of that man lingered in her mind, the stillness in him, the way his eyes had seemed to carry a story he didn't want anyone to read. When she came home that evening, the truck was gone. The lights were on next door. A golden glow spilled across the wet pavement, soft and lonely. She noticed something else to a small cardboard box on her porch. No label, just a folded note taped to the top. "You dropped this morning." Inside Owen's crayon box. She smiled despite herself. Asterisk, "Hi, Mr." The man turned off the mower, lifted his head, and actually smiled this time. Not a big one, but real enough to change his whole face. "Hey, buddy. Lost your crayons yesterday. Thanks. Mum says I have too many, but you can never have too many, right?" Nick, though Lily didn't know his name yet, chuckled quietly. "Can't argue with that." Lily stepped out onto the porch, coffee in hand, sunlight brushing her hair. "Looks like you met my little extrovert." The man straightened, wiped his hands on a towel. He introduced himself. "I'm Nick." "Lily," she said. "And that's Owen." Nick nodded. "Nice to meet you both." There was a small pause, comfortable somehow. The kind of silence that didn't demand to be filled. Owen broke it first. "Do you have kids?" Nick's smile faltered, just for a second. "No," he said softly. "Not anymore." Lily's heart stuttered. She wanted to ask, but something in his tone told her not to. By late afternoon, the sun had dipped behind the maples, staining the neighborhood in pale orange. Lily was home early for once, a rare gift. She'd picked up Owen from school, microwaved leftover lasagna, and was halfway through sorting bills when the lights flickered once, then went out completely again. She muttered, standing. Owen peeked up from his coloring book. "Mum," the TV stopped. "I know, sweetheart." She sighed. It's probably the same old fuse. I'll check. The basement was cold, the air thick with the smell of dust and damp concrete. She flipped the breaker. Nothing happened. The silence upstairs stretched too long, the kind that made the house feel suddenly too big. Then, a soft knock at the back door. 3 raps. Measured. Her stomach jumped. Maplewood was quiet, and no one knocked after dark. She grabbed her phone, flashlight trembling slightly in her hand, and peered through the small kitchen window. A tall figure stood on the porch, hood damp from the drizzle, holding something that gleamed faintly in the light. Lily. The voice was deep, familiar. It's Nick. You've lost power too. She exhaled, relieved, but still guarded, and opened the door halfway. Yeah, it's out again. I think the line's old. I've got tools, he said, lifting a small flashlight and a screwdriver set. Mind if I take a look? She hesitated. Her first instinct say no, handle it herself. That's what she'd done for years. But then Owen's small voice carried from the hall. Is it Mr. Nick? Lily sighed softly, pushed the door open. Sure, thanks. Nick ducked inside, water dripping from his jacket. He moved with quiet confidence, like someone who was used to fixing things, or maybe used to control. Down in the basement, he crouched in front of the old panel, tapping lightly on the casing. You've got a short, he murmured. Looks like the neutral wire's loose. You sound like you've done this before. He gave a faint, self-conscious smile, picked up a few things along the way. Within minutes, the lights blinked back to life. Warm, golden, familiar. Lily blinked against the sudden brightness. Wow, I've been meaning to call someone for weeks. Nick closed the panel, dusted his hands. Well, now you owe me coffee. She laughed quietly, more out of surprise than amusement. I don't usually let strange men fix my house. Good policy, he said evenly. Guess I'll have to earn not strange status. There was something about the way he said it, not flirtatious, but honest, like a man relearning how to speak softly, upstairs. Owen's laughter broke the moment. He came running down, holding 2 mugs. I poured juice for everyone, he announced proudly. Nick crouched, taking the cup carefully. Thanks, champ. The 3 of them ended up sitting in the living room for a while, Lily on the couch, Nick in the old armchair that still smelled faintly of her late father's cologne. Owen cross-legged on the rug. They talked about little things, weather, work, how. Maplewood was the kind of place where nothing ever really changed. But under it all was something else, a thread of warmth. Neither of them had expected to find. When Nick finally stood to leave, Lily walked him to the door. Rain still fell outside, soft and rhythmic. Thank you, she said quietly. He looked at her, eyes steady, tired but kind. It's nothing. Then, with a small nod, good night, Lily. Good night, Nick. She watched him cross the yard, the glow from her porch light catching in the rain. He moved like a man used to walking alone, but maybe, for the first time, not wanting to. The next morning, Maplewood woke under a sky washed clean. Dew shimmered on the lawns, and the smell of wet grass lingered in the air. Lily stood at the sink, still in her robe, sipping coffee as sunlight spilled through the window, across the yard. Nick was already outside, hoodie sleeves rolled, fixing the sagging section of his fence. He worked quietly, precise and patient, the way someone did when they were trying to tire out their thoughts. Owen pressed his face to the window. He's fixing the fence, Mum. Can I help? Lily laughed. Sweetheart, you can barely reach the hammer. I can hand him the nails. Before she could protest, he was already at the door, dinosaur pajamas flapping as he ran barefoot across the grass. Morning. ONCHIRPED. Nick looked up, squinting against the sun. You again, he said, smiling faintly. Don't you have school? It's Saturday, Owen said proudly. So I can work. Nick straightened, resting his hands on his knees. You any good with a hammer? Mum says I'm dangerous with one, Owen admitted. Smart woman. Lily walked over then, half embarrassed, half amused. I swear he's part golden retriever. Nick grinned, the expression softening the sharp lines of his face. He's got better energy than most people I know. She shrugged. 6-year-olds don't have bills to pay. He hesitated, then handed Owen a nail. Here, you can hold this. Don't drop it, okay? I won't, Owen said, clutching it with serious concentration. Lily watched them for a moment, her son, who trusted everyone, and the man who seemed to trust no one, and something in her chest warmed unexpectedly when the fence was fixed. Nick offered lemonade from a pitcher sitting on his porch table. The glasses were crystal, too fine for a man supposedly living alone. You like fancy things, huh? Lily teased, setting her cup down. He gave a small, knowing smirk. Old habits die hard. She tilted her head. What did you used to do? He paused, too long. Then, consulting. Finance mostly. It wasn't a lie. Not exactly. But something about the way he said it felt like one. Before Lily could press, her phone buzzed. A message from the hospital, asking if she could cover a night shift. She groaned. Work? Nick asked. Yeah, they're short-staffed. Always are. I can watch Owen for a bit, if you need to run errands before your shift, he offered casually. Lily blinked. That's kind of you, but just an offer, he said quickly, lifting his hands. I've got nothing else to do except chase squirrels out of the yard. Owen's eyes lit up. Can I please, Mum? Lily hesitated. Every protective instinct in her wanted to say no. But then she saw Nick's expression, patient, calm, waiting without pressure. And somehow, she said, okay, just for an hour. That hour stretched into 2. When Lily returned from the store. She found Nick and Owen on the back porch, surrounded by open Lego boxes. You've met my weakness, Nick said dryly. Structural engineering. Owen held up a Lego tower that leaned precariously. We're building the world's tallest building. It's called the Owen Tower. Nick nodded solemnly. And it's about to collapse. It did spectacularly. And Owen laughed so hard, he fell sideways. Nick laughed, too, a low, honest sound that startled even him. Lily leaned against the railing, arms folded, watching them. You two seem to get along. Kids got vision, Nick said. Kids got sugar, Lily replied. And bedtime's going to be a war. Nick smiled faintly, eyes lingering on her a beat longer than necessary. Worth it. Later that night, when the house was quiet, Lily noticed a light still glowing through Nick's upstairs window. A silhouette sat by the desk, head bent, shoulders heavy, the picture of someone who couldn't quite rest. For a moment, she wondered what ghosts he was trying to keep out. She didn't know that on the desk in front of him lay a photo frame turned face down, a woman's smile frozen in time. and the faint laughter of a little girl in the background. He reached for it once, hesitated, and left it there. Outside, the rain began again, soft and forgiving. Part 2, the quiet bond segment 1/2. The following weeks settled into a rhythm that felt suspiciously like peace. Maplewood bloomed into early summer. Lawns smelling of cut grass and lilac, kids chasing sprinklers in driveways. Lily found herself spending more evenings on the porch, sometimes with a book, sometimes with a cup of coffee she never finished. And somehow, Nick was just there. He'd wave when she came home from work, lend her his ladder when a gutter came loose, fix the squeaky hinge on her front door without being asked. He didn't hover, didn't intrude, just appeared when she needed help and disappeared when she didn't. Owen adored him. Some mornings, Lily woke to the sound of laughter from next door. The boy's shrill giggle mingled with Nick's low chuckle as they tossed a baseball back and forth. Once, she found Owen sitting on Nick's porch, solemnly explaining dinosaur classifications while Nick listened, like it was the most important lecture in the world. "Do you ever get tired of all his questions?" she asked once, leaning on the fence between their yards. Nick looked up from tying Owen's shoelace. "Questions mean he's curious. Curious means he's brave. Don't ever tell him to stop asking." There was something in the way he said it, quiet conviction edged with memory. Lily smiled faintly. "You sound like a teacher." He shook his head. "No, just someone who wishes he'd asked more questions when he had the chance." She didn't ask what that meant. Not yet. One Saturday, Nick hosted what Owen called the world's smallest cookout. It was just the three of them, a tiny grill and paper plates balanced on their knees. The air smelled of smoke and butter and sun-warmed grass. "Best burger ever," Owen declared with his mouth full. Nick grinned. High praise from a connoisseur. Lily laughed. "He says that about cereal too." "Well," Nick said, flipping another patty, "he's not wrong." They talked for hours about nothing and everything. Lily learned that Nick had lived all over, but he dodged specifics. She told him about her night shifts, her struggles as a nurse, how Owen's father had left before he was born. "I don't regret it," she said quietly, staring into the flames. "But sometimes I wish I didn't have to do all of it alone." Nick turned slightly, studying her face. "You've done more than most people could." She met his gaze, steady, warm, and for a heartbeat too long, neither looked away. Owen's voice broke the spell. "Mom, can we roast marshmallows?" Nick exhaled, smiling. Saved by the kid. Later, when the sky deepened into navy and the fire burned low, Lily carried a sleepy Owen inside. Nick stayed behind, cleaning up. She returned a few minutes later with 2 mugs of tea. "You didn't have to stay." He shrugged. "It's quiet out here." "I like quiet." "You're not from quiet places, are you?" she asked softly. He froze, caught off guard. "What makes you say that?" "You check your phone like it's going to explode," she said, half teasing. "And you still flinch every time a car slows down out front." Nick's jaw tightened. "Old habits?" Lily hesitated. "Bad ones." He looked away, toward the dark street. "The kind that don't die easy." For a moment, the only sound was the soft crackle of dying embers. Then Lily said gently, "You don't have to tell me. But, whatever it was, it doesn't live here anymore." Nick's shoulders eased. He looked at her, something raw flickering in his eyes. "You sound sure of that." I have to be, she said, smiling faintly. Otherwise, life would just be one long panic attack. He laughed quietly, the first real laugh she'd heard from him, and somehow, the night didn't feel so heavy after that. The following Sunday was one of those rare summer days when everything seemed to glow. The air was warm but not heavy, the kind of morning that begged for windows to be open and music to drift. Lazily between houses, Lily had planned to spend the day catching up on laundry. Owen had other plans. "Mum," he said, bouncing on the couch, "Mr. Nick said there's a park with ducks. Can we go, please?" Lily looked up from folding sheets. "He did, huh?" As if on cue, there was a knock at the door. When she opened it, Nick stood there, casual in a grey t-shirt and baseball cap, holding a paper bag. "I bribed him with donuts," he said. Lifting the bag, "You're evil," she said, trying not to smile. "Efficient," he countered. Lily hesitated for half a second, then shrugged. "Fine, but I'm driving." They took her old Honda windows down, radio humming soft rock from the 90s. Owen sat in the back, donut glaze all over his face, narrating everything he saw. When they reached the park, the world seemed to open up a lake glinting beneath tall trees. Kids feeding ducks, couples stretched out on picnic blankets. Owen ran ahead, his laughter carrying on the breeze. Lily and Nick followed slowly. "Hard to believe this is 20 minutes from home," she said. Nick nodded. "Most people don't look for peace until they lose it." There was weight in that sentence, the kind that came from experience, not philosophy. They sat on a bench by the water. For a while, neither spoke. Ducks quacked softly in the distance, and the air smelled faintly of rain on wood. "You're good with him," Lily said finally. Nick smiled without looking away from the lake. "He's a good kid, curious, honest. You talk like someone who's studied people." He exhaled slowly. "I've managed people." "It's not the same, you mean? In finance?" Nick's jaw tightened again, that telltale flicker she'd started recognizing. "Something like that." When she didn't push, he glanced at her. "You're not going to ask?" She shook her head. "You'll tell me when you want to." A faint smile tugged at the corner of his mouth. "You're not like most people I've met. Good or bad. Different," he said softly. "Better." Owen came running back, waving a small paper boat he'd folded from a napkin. "Mr. Nick, look. It floats." Nick crouched beside him. "You built that?" "Yep." "Wanna race yours?" Nick laughed, a genuine, unguarded sound. "You're on." They launched two boats side by side, Owen's napkin creation and Nick's sturdier version from notebook paper. For a moment, they both watched in mock serious concentration as the tiny sails drifted across the ripples. Lily took a photo without thinking, the boy's bright grin, the man's quiet smile, the sunlight turning the water to gold. When she looked at it later, she realized it was the first picture she had of the three of them together that evening. Back home, Owen fell asleep early, worn out and happy. Lily stepped onto the porch, finding Nick there again, leaning against the railing, looking at the stars. "You stayed," she said softly. "Didn't feel like going inside," he replied. "Too quiet in there." She handed him a mug of tea. "You know," she said, "you don't have to keep pretending you moved here for the peace and quiet." He glanced at her, eyes shadowed but gentle. "What makes you think I'm pretending?" "Because you still flinch at silence," she said simply. Nick looked down at the cup in his hands. For a long time, he didn't answer. Then, almost in a whisper, "There was an accident. A long time ago. My wife and daughter." He stopped. The rest of the sentence hung in the night air like fog. Lily didn't move closer. She didn't touch him. She just stood beside him, silent and steady, the way someone does when there's nothing left to fix, only to hold. Nick's voice was barely audible. Sometimes, when it's too quiet, I still hear her laugh. My daughter, she was about Owen's age. The porch light flickered once, the sound of crickets filling the pause. Lily swallowed. "I'm sorry, Nick." He nodded once, eyes glistening faintly. "Yeah, me too." They stood there until the tea went cold. That night, after he left, Lily couldn't sleep. She sat by her window, looking at the faint light still burning in Nick's living room, and thought for the first time that maybe broken people didn't always need saving. Sometimes they just needed someone who stayed. It started on a Thursday, the kind of grey, uneventful day that should have stayed ordinary. Lily was sitting in the hospital cafeteria, sipping coffee that tasted vaguely of burnt paper, scrolling absently through her phone. Owen had a field trip that day. Nick had offered to drop him off at school. Everything was routine until her co-worker, Jenna, slid into the seat across from her. "Okay, you are not going to believe this." Lily looked up. "What?" Jenna turned her phone toward her. "You know that tech company, Vantage Systems? The one that's been on the news for weeks because their CEO disappeared. Can't say I've been keeping up. Well, he just resurfaced, apparently retired early, sold his shares, walked away with a few billion. Look." Lily glanced at the screen, and the world seemed to tilt. The headline read, "Nick Carter, former Vantage Systems CEO, spotted in Portland suburb after year of seclusion." Underneath, a photo, grainy, taken from a distance, but unmistakable. Her neighbor, her friend, the man who'd fixed her lights, grilled burgers, laughed with her son. Her coffee went cold in her hand. "Lily, you okay?" She forced herself to breathe. "Yeah, I know him." Jenna blinked. "You what?" She shook her head quickly. "It's nothing," but it wasn't nothing. Her pulse hammered as she read the article. Vantage Systems CEO steps down after family tragedy. The words car accident, loss, and rehabilitation blurred together. So it was true. Nick hadn't just been hiding pain. He'd been hiding an entire life. That evening, Lily couldn't meet his eyes. Nick came over like usual, bringing Owen's forgotten backpack, joking lightly at the door, but she kept her voice short, her smile tight. "Everything okay?" he asked. "Fine," she said, too quickly. He frowned. "You sure?" "Just tired. Long shift." He nodded slowly, studying her face. "All right. Get some rest." When the door closed behind him, Lily leaned against it, the weight of truth pressing down on her chest. She wasn't angry. Not yet, just hurt, because the man she'd started to trust, the one who'd become part of her little world, had been lying every day, not about something small, but about who he was. The next morning, she found him in his driveway, tightening a screw on his mailbox. She crossed the lawn before she could talk herself out of it. "So," she said evenly, "Nick Carter, huh?" He froze. The wrench slipped from his fingers, clattering to the ground. "I don't bother," she said sharply. "I saw the article. Vantage Systems. The missing billionaire. That's you, right? Nick straightened, silent for a long moment. Yeah, he said finally. That's me. Wow, she said, laughing bitterly. You must have had a hell of a time pretending to be the guy who fixes light bulbs. It wasn't pretending, he said quietly. It was surviving. Surviving what? A mansion too big. Too many zeros in your bank account. Lily, no. She cut him off, voice trembling now. You came into my life, into my son's life, acting like you were just some guy trying to start over. But you knew that if I found out who you were, everything would change. Nick's voice was calm, but there was pain in it. That's exactly why I didn't tell you. Because you didn't trust me. Because I didn't want to lose this, he said, stepping closer, gesturing between them. For once, someone saw me as a person, not a headline, not a scandal, not a walking bank account. Lily shook her head, tears stinging her eyes. And what happens when the world finds you again, Nick? What happens to people like us, the ones you leave behind? He didn't answer. The silence between them said everything. That night, Lily didn't see his lights on. His porch, the one that had been glowing every night since he moved in, stayed dark. Owen asked where he was. She said he was busy, but the truth was, she didn't know if he was coming back. For 2 days, the house next door stayed silent. No lights, no sound, no movement, Owen noticed first. Mum, he said at breakfast, spoon halfway to his mouth, where's Mr. Nick? We were going to finish building the Lego tower. Lily forced a smile that didn't reach her eyes. He had to go somewhere, honey. Grown-up stuff. Is he coming back? I don't know. The words tasted like ash. That night, she stood by her window, staring at the empty driveway. The house looked lifeless again, like it had before he came. Only this time, it felt worse, because she knew what it had been like with him there. She told herself she was angry, that it was good he was gone, that she didn't need another man walking into her life only to leave. But at 3 a.m, she caught herself whispering his name into the dark. On the 3rd day, the news vans came. Lily was making Owen's lunch when the first one rolled down Maplewood Avenue, bright logo, camera hanging from the window. 2 more followed. Then another dot by noon. The cul-de-sac was crowded. Reporters lingered by Nick's gate, calling his name, Mr. Carter. Are you planning to return to Vantage? Nick, is it true the accident report was sealed by your legal team? Mr. Carter, who's the woman and child seen with you? Asterisk. Lily froze. Her heart slammed against her ribs. The last question hit like a punch. She grabbed Owen's hand and closed the curtains. A few minutes later, her phone buzzed, an unknown number. She almost ignored it, but the voice on the other end made her heart stop. Lily, Nick said quietly. Don't open the door for anyone, please. Her throat tightened. Where are you? Not far, he said. I didn't mean for any of this to reach you. I thought I could keep that world separate. You lied to me, she whispered. To us, I know, he said. And I'll make it right. I promise. Promises don't fix everything. No, he said. But sometimes they're all we have left. Then the line went dead. By evening, the vans were still there. The noise, the lights, the constant hum of questions she didn't have answers for. When she finally stepped outside to take the trash out, a microphone was shoved in her face. Ma'am, do you know Mr. Carter personally? Is your son his child? Lily's stomach dropped. She froze, then heard the familiar low rumble of an engine. A black SUV turned the corner, stopping at the curb. Nick stepped out. The reporters surged forward, shouting, snapping pictures. But Nick didn't look at them. He looked straight at her. His voice was calm, commanding the voice of the man he used to be. "She's not part of this," he said, stepping between her and the cameras. "You want a story? Take it from me. Leave her out of it." The chaos dimmed under the weight of his tone. Security guards, apparently moved in, forming a barrier. He turned to her, then eyes tired but steady. "I'll handle this. I should have told you everything from the start." Lily swallowed hard. "Why are you here, Nick? You could have stayed gone, because walking away from you two felt worse than everything else I've lost." The words hit her harder than she expected. He glanced down at Owen, who was standing behind her now, clutching her hand. Nick crouched, just for a moment. "Hey, champ," he said softly. "I'm sorry about the Lego tower." Owen's voice was small. "You're coming back, right?" Nick's throat worked. "If your mom lets me." Lily blinked away tears. Too many emotions tangled in her chest to sort out. The cameras clicked around them, but in that small circle of chaos, it felt like the world had gone quiet again, just the three of them. Like before, that night, when the reporters were finally gone. Lily sat alone on the porch. The rain had started again, gentle, rhythmic, familiar, across the yard. The light in Nick's window glowed once more, and though she couldn't see him, she knew he was awake, sitting there, just like her, wondering if something broken could ever be trusted again. Part 4, The Past. Returns, Segment 1, half the world moved on, at least. That's what it looked like from the outside. The reporters stopped coming after a week. The headlines shifted to newer scandals, shinier tragedies. Maplewood went back to its quiet rhythm. But nothing between Lily and Nick felt the same. He still lived next door. He still waved when he saw her, but they both pretended not to notice how careful their smiles had become. Lily missed the man, who used to show up unannounced with coffee or fix her fence without asking. She didn't miss the billionaire, she missed the neighbor one afternoon. Owen came home from school holding a small folded paper. "Mum, Mr. Nick gave me this for you." She frowned, wiping her hands on a towel, and opened it. "Lily, I know I have no right to ask for your time, but I'd like to explain everything. Not here, too many eyes. Will you come by tonight?" Nick, for a long moment, she just stared at the handwriting, neat, deliberate, almost old-fashioned. Then she sighed. "I guess it's time," she murmured. The air that evening was cool and sharp with the smell of pine. When Lily knocked, the door opened almost instantly. Nick stood there. No hoodie this time, just a plain white shirt, sleeves rolled. As if he wanted to appear less like a ghost of power and more like the man she'd come to know. "Thanks for coming," he said quietly. "Don't thank me yet," she replied. He smiled faintly, stepping aside. "Come in." The inside of his house surprised her. Not the sleek, modern mansion she'd expected, but something warmer, older. The furniture was simple. Bookshelves lined the walls, and on the mantel sat a single framed photograph. Lily's gaze caught it immediately. A woman and a little girl, both smiling at the camera. Nick followed her eyes. His voice, when it came, was low. "That's Emma and Clara, my wife and daughter." Lily swallowed. "They were beautiful. They were my world," he said, "until one night, One text and one mistake changed everything. He gestured toward the couch. "You should sit," she did. Cautiously, Nick stayed standing, pacing slowly as he spoke. "I'd been working for Vantage for 11 years. I built it from nothing. The code, the contracts, the whole damn empire. And I loved it. I loved it so much that I started believing work would wait for me to come home someday." He stopped, his voice tightening. But it didn't. He looked at her, eyes shadowed, distant. "Emma called me that night. I was in the middle of a deal. She said she was taking Clara to her mother's house. I told her to go ahead. I didn't know she was driving through the storm." Lily's heart clenched. "Nick, they never made it," he said simply. "The police said the car hydroplaned off the bridge. They were gone before the ambulance even got there." Silence filled the room, heavy and unrelenting. Nick ran a hand through his hair. "After that, I couldn't walk into my office again. I couldn't look at my phone. Every sound felt like that last call I didn't answer. So I left. Sold everything. Disappeared." He looked at her then, and his voice cracked slightly. "When I moved here, I just wanted quiet. I wasn't looking for anyone. And then your kid waved at me, and you offered coffee." Lily's eyes burned. "You didn't have to carry that alone." He gave a broken laugh. "That's the thing about guilt, Lily. It doesn't want company." For a moment, she didn't speak. Then she reached across the small distance between them, her hand brushing his. "I can't imagine what you've been through," she said softly. "But I know this. You can't keep living like you're still standing on that bridge." Nick looked down at her hand, trembling slightly against his. "Maybe," he whispered, "but I don't know how to step off." Outside, thunder rumbled in the distance, faint, but enough to make both of them glance toward the window. And in that brief flicker of lightning, Lily saw something she hadn't before. Not a billionaire, not a neighbor, but a man who'd been drowning for years and finally wanted to breathe. The next morning was grey again. The kind of grey that never promised rain but carried it anyway. Nick hadn't slept. He sat in the dark long after Lily left, staring at the photograph on the mantel. Emma's smile, Clara's little hand on his shoulder, both frozen in a world that didn't exist anymore. By dawn, he'd made up his mind when Lily opened her door that morning. Nick was already standing on her porch, hair damp from the mist. A faint tremor in his voice. "I need to go somewhere," he said. "And I don't think I can do it alone." She didn't ask where. She just nodded. "Let me grab my keys." The drive took almost 2 hours out of the city, through winding country roads that smelled of rain-soaked earth and pine. Neither of them spoke much. The silence wasn't awkward. It was full of meaning neither could quite put into words. When the bridge finally appeared, long, rusted, stretching over a slow grey river, Lily felt Nick's hand tighten on the steering wheel. "This is it?" she asked softly. He nodded once. "Yeah." They parked near the guardrail, and Nick stepped out first. The wind tugged at his shirt, carrying the faint metallic scent of water and time. "I haven't been back since," he said quietly. "The police found the car down there. I couldn't bring myself to see it." Lily followed him to the edge. The river was calm now, deceptively so, just a shimmer of silver moving beneath the clouds. "Why now?" she asked. Nick's eyes stayed fixed on the water. "Because for the first time I feel like I'm allowed to remember them without breaking." He pulled a small box from his pocket. Inside was a tiny gold bracelet, child-sized, tarnished at the edges. "Clarice," he said, "I kept it all this time." Lily's throat tightened. "You never let yourself say goodbye." He nodded. "I didn't know how." Then, without another word, he knelt by the railing and held the bracelet over the water. His voice shook when he spoke again. "I'm sorry," he whispered, "for not being there, for letting work mean more than you, for taking this long to come back." He let the bracelet go. It fell in a soft arc, hitting the river with barely a sound before vanishing into the current. For a long time, he didn't move. Then, slowly, he exhaled, a long, uneven breath that sounded almost like relief. Lily stepped beside him, resting a hand on his arm. "You did the hardest part," she said. "You came back." Nick turned toward her, eyes wet but calm. "You know what the worst thing about grief is? What? It teaches you how to live without something you thought you couldn't." Lily met his gaze. "And the best thing?" He hesitated, a small, raw smile touching his lips. "That sometimes someone reminds you you don't have to." The wind carried the last of the words away. They stood there until the clouds broke, and a thin band of sunlight touched the river, soft and gold and almost forgiving. Nick closed his eyes, lifted his face to the warmth, and for the first time in years, the ache in his chest didn't feel like punishment. It felt like memory, something he could finally live with. When they walked back to the car, he looked at Lily and said quietly, "Thank you." "For what?" "She asked for finding me before I was ready to be found." That night, the porch light outside Nick's house was on again, not because he needed it, but because he wanted to. From her window, Lily saw him sitting outside, a cup of coffee in his hands, staring into the soft night sky, and for the first time, he didn't look haunted. He looked home. It started with a phone call he didn't want to answer. Nick had been avoiding that number for weeks. But that morning, as the fog lifted off the lawns and the quiet of Maplewood began its usual hum, his phone buzzed again, same number, same persistence. He almost let it ring out. Almost then, on the final buzz, he answered, "Carter, Jesus." "Nick," came the voice on the other end, sharp, impatient. "You've been off the grid for a year. Do you know what kind of hole you left behind?" Nick closed his eyes. "Good morning to you too, Alan. Don't good morning me. The board's a mess, investors are panicking, and now that photo of you in Portland is everywhere. Reporters think you're making a comeback." "Are you?" "No, well, that's unfortunate, because your name's still on a dozen contracts. And if you don't show up at the shareholders summit next week, we're dead in the water." Nick rubbed the back of his neck, staring out the window. Lily was outside with Owen, helping him ride his bike, the sound of laughter faint through the glass. It hit him like a shot of sunlight he didn't deserve. "Alan," he said quietly, "I'm done. I left that world for a reason." "I know why you left," Alan said. "But this isn't just about you anymore. People's jobs are on the line. You don't get to vanish when things get hard." Nick's voice turned to steel. "That's exactly what I get to do. I built that company. I buried my family because of it. I'm not going back." A pause. Then Alan sighed. "They'll come to you, Nick, if you don't walk in willingly. They'll drag you." The line went dead. Nick stood there for a long moment, phone still in his hand, watching the sunlight spill across the grass. He knew Alan wasn't wrong. That evening, he knocked on Lily's door. She opened it with flour on her hands and a smudge of sauce on her cheek. The smell of dinner warm in the air. "Hey," she said, smiling faintly. "You hungry?" He hesitated. "I just wanted to talk." Something in his tone made her step aside. "Owen's upstairs," she said softly. Nick nodded. "Good. I didn't want him to hear this." They sat at the table, the soft clink of dishes filling the quiet. "What's going on?" she asked. "They found me," he said simply. "The company, the press, everyone." Lily's expression shifted. Worry first, then resignation. "What does that mean for you?" "For us," he corrected softly. "They'll come here. Reporters, cameras, people who want a statement or a photo or a reason to make a story out of my life. And you think they'll drag me and Owen into it? They already did once." She leaned back, arms crossed. "So what do you want me to do, Nick? Move again? Hide? Pretend we don't exist?" "No," he said quickly. "You shouldn't have to hide from anything. Then what?" He hesitated, then said the one thing that terrified him most. "I might have to go back." Lily stared at him, the words landing like a blow. "Go back where?" "To Vantage," he said. "Just for a while. Close it properly. Settle everything before it lands on your doorstep." Her voice cracked. "You can't fix every mess by disappearing again." Nick met her eyes, steady, tired, but certain. "This time, I'm not disappearing. I'm protecting what I care about, us." She whispered. He nodded once. "You." The silence that followed was thick and trembling, the kind that said too much and not enough at the same time. Lily looked away first, then promise me something. Anything. When it's over, don't just come back because you feel guilty. Come back because you want to. Nick's chest tightened. "I already do." The next morning, he was gone before sunrise. Owen found the note on the kitchen table, next to a small Lego piece shaped like a tower. "Build something strong, kid. I'll be back soon." When Lily read it, her hand shook. She wanted to believe him. She really did. But promises had always sounded like goodbyes to her. The city looked different when he returned. Or maybe he did. The skyline was a grid of glass and light, cold, perfect, unfeeling. The kind of beauty that only existed to remind you what you'd lost trying to build it. Nick's car stopped in front of Vantage Tower, the company's headquarters. Cameras flashed before he even opened the door. "Mr. Carter, are the rumors true? Is the nurse from Maplewood your girlfriend? Are you returning as CEO?" He ignored them, walking through the lobby like a man walking through a ghost of his former life. Every step echoed against marble that used to make him proud. Now it just sounded hollow. Alan met him at the elevator. "You look like hell," he said. Nick smirked. "Thanks. You look like a man about to ask for a miracle." "I'll settle for survival," Alan said. "They're waiting upstairs." The boardroom hadn't changed. Same panoramic windows, same slick table, same vultures in expensive suits pretending to be allies. "Mr. Carter," one of them said with a thin smile, "welcome back to civilization." "Civilization," Nick said, taking a seat. "I must have missed the part where you all became human." Laughter rippled awkwardly. They launched into numbers, projections, public image recovery. Nick barely heard them. His mind kept drifting to Maplewood, to Lily's kitchen light still flickering in the mornings, to Owen's laugh echoing across the fence. Nick, Alan said quietly, nudging his arm. They're asking about the article. Nick blinked. What article? A tablet slid across the table. On the screen, a headline. Runaway CEO reunites with mystery single mother and child. Photos followed. Lily on her porch. Owen riding his bike. Their home, his safe place, now splashed across the world. Nick's heart stopped. Who leaked this? Does it matter? One board member said, You're trending. We can spin it. The reformed man, the redemption story. People love that. Nick's voice went cold. She's not your headline. It's public interest, Nick. He stood abruptly, chair scraping hard against the floor. No, it's cruelty dressed up as curiosity. If anyone so much as steps foot on that street, I'll burn this company to the ground. Silence. Alan swallowed. Nick, he turned toward the window, watching rain streak across the glass. You wanted me back. You got me. But not the man who built this. The man who learned what matters. He looked at them, eyes steady, voice low. Effective immediately, I'm transferring majority control to Alan. I'll advise remotely. I'm done running your circus. One of the directors sputtered. You can't just, I can, Nick said. And I just did. He walked out without looking back. By the time he reached Maplewood, night had fallen. Lily's driveway was crowded again. Vans, reporters, lights cutting through the rain. He didn't hesitate. He parked across the street, slammed the door, and strode straight through the chaos. Cameras flashed. Voices shouted, Mr. Carter, are you confirming the relationship? Nick, are you the father of her child? He stopped at Lily's porch and turned. Listen carefully, he said, his voice sharp enough to cut through the noise. That woman and her son are off limits. You want a story? Here it is. I'm the man who lost everything chasing headlines. I won't let you destroy the only two people who made me human again. The street went silent. Rain dripped from his hair, flashes of light dancing off the wet asphalt. Then he turned toward Lily. She stood in the doorway, arms folded, trying and failing to hide how much she was shaking. Nick, she said softly. He exhaled, stepping closer. I told you I'd come back. You said a lot of things. I meant all of them. The tension cracked, not from words, but from the way he looked at her. Tired, vulnerable, completely open. Lily's voice trembled. You just told the whole world about us. I didn't tell them about us, he said. I told them to stay the hell away. Her lips curved into the smallest, most painful smile. That's not exactly how people fall in love, you know. He smiled back, faintly, warily. Maybe not. But it's how people start over. Owen peeked from behind her leg, eyes wide. Mr. Nick. Nick crouched down, soaking wet, meeting the boy's gaze. Hey champ. You've still got that Lego tower. Owen nodded eagerly. We saved it. Nick grinned. Good. We'll finish it tomorrow. That night, when the last van left and the neighborhood went quiet again, Lily brought him a towel and a cup of tea. He sat on her porch, still dripping rainwater, the faintest trace of relief in his eyes. You're soaked, she said. He looked at her, smiling softly. Worth it. She hesitated, then reached for his hand. He didn't pull away. For a long moment, they just sat there, the rain whispering around them, their fingers intertwined, both of them realizing that sometimes storms didn't come to destroy. Sometimes they came to wash everything clean. It took weeks for the world to lose interest again. The reporters drifted away like a passing storm, hungry for newer chaos. The headlines that once screamed Nick's name were buried under celebrity divorces and stock crashes. And just like that, Maplewood went quiet. Nick stayed. Not just physically, he stayed. He rented a small workspace downtown, one with more bookshelves than monitors. Advisory, he told Lily, helping smaller companies. Nothing big. Nothing that eats my life. He kept his word. He came home before sunset every day. Sometimes he and Owen built Lego towers that reached the ceiling. Sometimes he and Lily sat on the porch, saying nothing at all. Silence didn't scare him anymore. One evening, as the air turned golden and crickets began their song, Lily found him fixing the old fence again, same spot as the day they met. "You know," she said, handing him a bottle of water, "I think you just like breaking it so you can fix it again." Nick chuckled. "Occupational therapy, the best kind." She leaned against the post, watching him work. "You look different lately." He glanced up. "Older?" "No," she said softly. "Lighter." He smiled faintly, driving the last nail into the wood. "Maybe because I stopped trying to control what I can't." Meaning. He met her eyes. Meaning life. Meaning people leaving. Meaning time. "All I can really do is show up every day and try not to screw up too badly." Lily's chest tightened. "You're doing better than most." They shared a look, quiet, real, full of unspoken warmth. Then Owen burst through the back door, waving a piece of paper. "Mr. Nick." "Guess what?" Nick crouched down. "What's that?" "It's a drawing," Owen said proudly. "It's us." Nick unfolded it carefully. The picture was childlike, but clear. 3 stick figures standing in front of 2 houses, a big yellow sun above them. Underneath, in shaky crayon letters, "My family." Nick stared at it for a long moment. His throat tightened, words lost somewhere between disbelief and gratitude. Lily's voice was soft behind him. He drew that on his own. He looked up, eyes bright. I don't know what to say." "Say thank you," Lily teased gently. Nick smiled through the lump in his throat. "Thank you, Owen. That's the best thing anyone's ever given me." Owen beamed. "You can keep it forever." Nick nodded. "I think I will." That night, after Owen went to bed, Nick sat on his porch, the drawing resting beside his coffee mug. The night air was cool, the kind that smelled faintly of lilac and rain. Lily joined him quietly, a blanket wrapped around her shoulders. "Do you ever miss it?" she asked. "What?" "The noise. The power. The life you had before." Nick thought for a long moment. "Sometimes," he admitted. "But then I remember I had everything except peace." She smiled faintly. "And now?" "Now," he said, looking toward her porch light glowing softly across the fence, "I have less, but it feels like more." Autumn came slowly that year, maple leaves turning amber, the air crisp, the smell of wood smoke drifting through the neighborhood. Lily started working fewer night shifts. Nick picked up Owen from school on Fridays. Somewhere along the way, their lives just merged. One Saturday morning, Lily woke to the sound of laughter outside. She looked through the window and saw Nick teaching Owen how to rake leaves into a pile big enough to jump in. "Bigger." Owen shouted. "It has to be bigger than me." Nick grinned. "That's not hard." Lily stood at the doorway, coffee in hand. watching them with a small smile that hurt in the best way. When Nick noticed her, he waved her over. "We could use quality control." She shook her head, laughing. "You're both ridiculous." He pointed the rake at her. "Come on, Lily, no spectators." A moment later, she was out there too, boots crunching against the grass, laughter spilling freely. When they finally collapsed into the pile, covered in leaves, Owen declared it the best day ever. Nick looked at Lily, eyes crinkling. He's not wrong. For a moment, neither moved. The world around them was golden and quiet, the wind soft against their faces. Lily turned to him. "You ever think this is what it's supposed to be? Not perfect, just enough." Nick nodded slowly. "Yeah, enough." He brushed a stray leaf from her hair. His hand lingered there a second longer than it should have. Not hesitant, not rushed, just right. Lily didn't look away. "Nick," she whispered, "are you staying this time?" He smiled. "I already did." That night, as they tucked Owen into bed, the boy mumbled sleepily, "Good night, Mum, good night, Mr. Nick." Then, half asleep, he added, "Good night, Dad." Nick froze. Lily's eyes met his, surprised, soft, shining. Neither corrected the boy. Nick leaned down, brushing a hand through Owen's hair. "Good night, buddy." When they stepped out of the room, Lily whispered, "He's never called anyone that before." Nick's voice trembled slightly. "Then I'd better live up to it." Later, when the house was quiet, they stood on the porch again. The sky was clear, stars scattered like sparks. Lily leaned against his shoulder. "Feels different tonight." Nick nodded, slipping an arm around her. "Yeah, feels like home." And for the first time in years, maybe ever, it truly was.